Okay, so today we're going deep on shelters. Specifically, how to build one when it really counts.
It's a life or death situation.
Exactly. And to guide us, we've got this awesome YouTube video, How to Build a Life-Saving Shelter Fast, from the Survivor blog channel.
Yeah, they've got some great stuff.
They do. Now, we've all seen survival shelters in movies and stuff, but honestly never thought too deeply about it. Just like a little hut to keep the rain off.
Right. But in reality, it's so much more than that. It can actually be the thing that keeps you alive.
Okay, so let's break down why shelter is so critical in a survival scenario. I mean, we can probably guess, like staying warm and dry.
Yeah, those are big ones. But think about it. A well-built shelter can regulate your body temperature even in extreme conditions. It protects you from wind, rain, snow, sun, all the elements, basically.
And bugs. Can't forget those pesky mosquitoes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely bugs, too. And beyond the physical protection, there's also a huge mental aspect.
Yeah.
Having a sheltered that safe zone can seriously boost your morale and help you stay focused and calm when everything else is chaotic.
So it's like a little haven, a home base in the wilderness.
Exactly. It gives you a sense of control in a situation where you might feel like you have none.
Okay, so that's the why. Now let's get into the how. What's the first thing someone needs to think about when they realize, uh-oh, I need to build a shelter right now?
Location, location, location. Just like with real estate, you've got to find the right spot.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are the key things to look for when choosing a spot? I'd imagine being close to resources like water and firewood would be good.
Those are definitely important considerations. But the absolute top priority has got to be finding a dry spot. Moisture is your enemy, especially in cold weather.
Oh, yeah. I remember once we were camping and started raining. We hadn't set up the tent properly and ended up sleeping in a puddle. It was miserable. And that was just a regular camping trip. I can't imagine how much worse it would be in a real survival situation.
Exactly. Hypothermia can set in incredibly quickly if you're wet and cold. So finding a spot that's elevated and well-drained is crucial.
Okay, so dry ground is number one. What else is important?
You also want to make sure your spot is flat and stable. You don't want to build on a slope or on loose ground. That's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, I could just picture it. You're all snug in your shelter, then whoops, the whole thing slides down a hill.
Exactly. Not a good situation. So flat and stable ground is key. And one more thing. Look up. Make sure there are no hazards above you, like dead branches that could fall or loose rocks.
Oh man, a falling branch in the middle of the night. That's like a horror movie waiting to happen.
Yeah, you definitely don't want any unwelcome surprises. So dry, flat, hazard-free. Those are the three things to keep in mind when choosing a location.
Got it. Okay, so once you found the perfect spot, what's next? Time to start gathering those building materials.
You got it. And this is where things get really interesting. Nature provides some amazing building materials if you know where to look.
So we're talking branches, leaves, grass, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Things that are readily available and often have great insulative properties.
Okay, but are all branches and leaves created equal? Like, is there a difference between using pine needles versus oak leaves, for example?
There definitely can be. Pine needles, for example, are surprisingly effective insulators. They trap air in a similar way to down feathers in a jacket, so they can help keep you warm even in really cold temperatures.
Wow, I never knew that. So it's not just about piling on any old leaves. There's actually some science behind it.
Exactly. Different materials have different properties, so it's worth taking the time to learn about the best options for your specific environment.
This is so cool. It's like nature's own hardware store.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our location, we've gathered our materials. Now comes the hard part, actually putting the shelter together.
Right. And just like building a house, you've got to start with a solid foundation. In shelter building, this means creating a sturdy framework.
So like the skeleton of the shelter.
Exactly. You need something strong enough to support the weight of the rest of the structure and whatever elements might be thrown at it. So thick branches, sturdy logs, that kind of thing.
Okay, and then on top of that framework comes the insulation, right? Just piling on those leaves and pine needles.
Layering is definitely important, but it's not just about quantity, it's about technique. Think of how animals build their dens. They weave together different materials to create pockets of trapped air for better insulation.
So there's an art to it. It's not just a random pile of debris.
Right. It's about creating layers that work together to trap heat and block wind and rain.
Okay, so we've got the framework, the insulation,
Mm-hmm.
anything else crucial?
Ventilation. You want to stay warm, but you don't want to suffocate. So make sure there's some airflow in your shelter.
Oh, right. I remember reading about someone who nearly suffocated in their shelter because they made it too airtight.
Yeah, that's a real danger.
Yeah.
So ventilation is key. And one last thing I want to emphasize is the importance of practicing different types of shelters. There are tons of different designs out there, like a lean-to, which uses a natural wall for support, or a debris hut, which is basically a mound of insulation.
So it's good to have a few different shelter building skills in your toolkit.
Exactly. You never know what kind of environment you might find yourself in. So being adaptable is key.
So location, material choice, construction techniques, it's more complex than it seems.
Right. But with a little knowledge and practice, anyone can build a life-saving shelter.
This has been fascinating. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into shelter building. So to wrap things up, here's a question for our listeners to ponder. How would your choice of materials for a shelter change depending on whether you were in a forest, a desert, or a snowy mountain?
That's a great question. It really gets you thinking about the specifics of survival.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
So yeah,